Waiting was the hardest part. Patience is what separates average from greatness. Billy Nighthawk's grandfather's wisdom came to mind, as it always did during times like this. In his youth, the lessons had been hard-fought. "Little hawk, you're as thick as the fog," he'd say. It had taken him until adulthood for it to make sense, but the fog of understanding had lifted, and those lessons learned had served him well. He'd been lying under the spiny branches of a gray horsebush for several hours. The shrub looked like dried coral turned gray. The ground was damp, as morning thawed from the past night's dip in temperature. He had remained unmoving for the last several hours, even as the dampness soaked into his legs through his thick winter-lined jeans. His surroundings came into focus as the sky slowly brightened. Billy looked through the eyepiece of the binoculars, scanning the horizon for a sign of the two men. In the distance, about 300 meters away, he saw movement. The rubber eye cups pressed lightly against his leathery skin as he gently toggled the Bushnell's center focusing lever, bringing the enhanced image into clarity. He blinked his eyes, trying to clear his vision. Maybe it was the cold start to the morning or the 2 days of tracking, and his mind was beginning to play tricks on him. Billy did a double take of a cluster of tightly woven chokecherry shrubs jutting out from behind a boulder of rock. The animal dipped its head low, skulking beneath a low-hanging branch. Cheetah-like black spots dotted the fur lining the sleek, muscular body of the big cat. At first glance, he thought it was a bobcat. With a flick of its tail, he realized, to his surprise, he was wrong. The end of his short tail was completely black, as if it had been dipped in tar. The lynx's subtle physical differences made it unique. Feathered tufts of hair protruding from the top of its ears and the Fu Manchu beard gave the majestic beast an air of wisdom. In his culture, the lynx was believed to be the seer of secrets, and on the night of his passage into manhood, it had been his spirit animal. Billy hadn't thought about that day in a long time. The return of the memory seemed fitting. It had been a day similar to this where the sky was gray and the ground was still cold from a late spring thaw. As was tradition, he had spent the previous 24 hours in a fasted, detoxified state. He remembered the solemn look on his father's face when he was brought to the sweat lodge. The lodge itself was not much to look at. It was set away from houses just beyond a slight rise in the land. A small hill blocked it from view of the other homes on the reservation, giving it a sense of isolation. Each family approached the use of the lodge in slightly different ways. In Billy's family, the tradition had been clearly laid out by prior generations, only for the men, and the first time was when a Nighthawk turned 16. The lodge was a place of transcendence and transformation, a connection to Mother Earth, although, at the time, Billy hadn't taken the spiritual journey seriously, at least in the beginning. He remembered the stone-lined pathway leading up to the lodge. The opening to the dome-shaped structure faced east, a purposeful connection to the rising of the sun, to new beginnings. 3 paces from the opening was a wooden post with a clean skull of a bear affixed to the top, a marker set to warn of the danger. Billy had entered the sweat lodge led by his grandfather and father. The withes of aspen were lashed together by rawhide to shape the deerskin dome. The opening was only a few feet high,